Haha, you're damn right. I think. Let's get a modcast going on a Tuesday at noon. We do it in the springtime. Welcome in Texas portal stuff. The draft is coming this week, and Texas and Texas A&M are going to play in baseball as God intended it. Let's get into it. Anwar Richardson is covering an availability with Sark as we speak, as we're recording the show. Jason Sukamel off the show today, taking care of some family stuff. Nothing but the best to the Sukamel family. And let's roll. Alex Dunlap is here, as you see. And the bottom two guys, they're ready to go as well. That's Cody Carpentier on the lower right. He and Alex, of course, bring you Football with Friends every weekday evening at 6. And Zach Sim is that lower left face. If you're a baseball fan, you already know who Zach is. He covers baseball for orangebloods.com. And right here on Orange Bloods Live, he does a little interview that we put out to you every Monday with, some guy. Actually, it's not some guy. It's Coach Slosh. It's Jim Schlossnagle giving Zach like 15, 20 minutes a week. That conversation's been fantastic to check out all season long. So check all that out on Orange Bloods Live. Fellas, good to see all of you. Good to see everybody in the chat as well. There are all kinds of hook 'em emojis flying around. H-Dog and Uncle Mickey. Brian jumps in. What up, Orange Bloods? Our man Chris Bennett is in with a big yo. So y'all go ahead and get in if you want to send a super chat. These guys will try to answer your questions as best they can. We are technically on day 7 of the portal, and Texas has obviously been active so far. But today ends up being an important day because of someone that is on campus visiting Texas. And I know at least one of these faces you're looking at says, don't let him get off campus, says, don't let him get out of Austin until you get an answer. And that guy is the upper right. That is Alex Dunlap. Alex, I loved reading the piece on orangebloods.com. I encourage people to do it. In fact, I'm going to throw a QR code at the folks while I'm bragging on the piece, because it is interesting to take a look at. If you want to check out Murad Watson is the guy we're going to be talking about, big D lineman from Syracuse. Go to orangebloods.com. Check out Alex's breakdown. He takes a look at some film and has plays that you can click on and look and watch this guy wearing big number 88 for Syracuse. So check that out. Alex, I'm going to let you start this because I know you've had a chance to take a look at him. How important, even though Texas has already made a move, multiple moves on the D tackle, side of things, how important do you think this guy is?
Well, I think that you should, like I just said, you should go ahead. They should go ahead and just lock him up and just pay the guy whatever, just sign him. I think, dude, this was always going to be the sort of the litmus test about when we get to the end of spring. They can't lie to us whenever they show us what they're going to be doing in the portal. And what we have seen is that the plans, seemingly to me, haven't really changed that much as far as wide receiver. Because we had thought from the very beginning, since back in February, that they were going to go after a slot wide receiver. To me, that's what Emmett Mosley the fifth sort of looks like. But I was very curious to see, Chad, we talked about this before. It's like if they go after one of these outside wide receivers or one of these pure speed guys or kind of a big name dude or whatever, it'll tell us that through the course of the spring, what they thought about these young wide receivers that they have on campus and their ability to step up, the freshmen, the Parker Livingstones, the Aaron Butlers, these types. We haven't seen the same urgency at wide receiver as we have with them sniffing around these defensive linemen. Of course, the first one, going out and getting Levon Johnson and the sort of a interesting kind of little recruiting battle / battle of wits is being reported with UNC as far as the contracts. But the fact that they're going after 2, it tells us that, maybe the Travis Shaws of the world, the Cole Brevards of the world, I think to a lesser degree Cole Brevard, but they haven't seen much out of Travis Shaw. Justice Terry's been banged up. Who really knows about Hero Canoe? Largely unproven to this point. Haven't heard anything terrible about him, but at least he's been healthy through spring. And of course, January and Melvin Hills. It's like, this is kind of a little bit of a mishmash of guys who you don't really know what you really have on board. And through spring, it's been a little bit awkward with Travis Shaw and Justice Terry being a little bit banged up. So I don't feel like they have a totally clear picture of what they have. But I do think hearing from players on the defensive side of the ball, whenever these guys talk at the availabilities, it's rare that you hear them mention unsolicited these defensive linemen. And it would feel like there's guys who they talk about that are these killers and stuff, but it doesn't feel like it's these. And I've talked to sources associated with the defensive side of the football who've told me things like, I'm like, how's the offensive line look? Like, what's the deal with, like, how's Brandon Baker? All they're like, stop worrying about the offensive line. Like, they're good. They're hard to go up against in practice. If you're going to worry about one, it's maybe the defensive line is something that could be a little bit more of a potential target in the transfer portal. And so when Watson comes available, it's just chat. It's like, it's not rocket science. It's like freshman All-American comes available at a position of need. He's long, he's big. He's held up. Like, I watched the Miami game yesterday. I broke it down, put up like 10 different plays, showing off different attributes of this guy. He could penetrate B gap. He can line up at the nose and two gap. He's really good at diagnosing from side to side. Shedding blockers and getting to the football. Good first step, not the best footwork currently. His feet aren't as well connected to his hands as you would like, but we have seen how Kenny Baker was able to really work with Vernon Broughton on that. If you just look at that Miami game, Cody, remind me of the name of number 64 for Miami again. Jalen Rivers.
Jalen Rivers, 4th, 5th round pick.
Yeah, that's like you've seen him go in the 3rd round of some of these mocks too. Like, basically a guy that could sneak into day 2, but probably an early day 3 pick. And Jalen Rivers is getting a bunch of good one-on-one evaluation reps in that game, in an offense that had, for Miami in that Syracuse game, Cam Ward, Xavier Restrepo, Damian Martinez, the running back, Elijah Arroyo. Like, it's a NFL, like, that game that Syracuse played that I charted was a game that was very important for Miami to win. Mm-hmm. And they didn't. And in that game, the most dominant player on the defensive side of football, certainly on the defensive line, was the freshman Murad Watson. Played 69 out of 74 snaps. That's unheard of for a defensive lineman, especially for a freshman. And in doing so, generated production once every 5.75 snaps in my grading scale. That would put him as now that's only one game, but it is 67 snaps. Whereas if I did this exercise for Travis Shaw to get to 69 snaps. If I were to do this thing for Travis Shaw, which I've done, it's like I would have to watch 3-4 games to get to that many snaps, right? If you compare it to what people have done as far as the efficiency on the season dating back to 2013, the closest comps for him would be sort of like a mix. If he could do that over the course of a season, which is saying something, right? That's not going to be something that's easy to do. But he generated production in that game at the same level that Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy were generating production at Texas over the course of a season in 2023. Tavondre Sweat generated production once every 5.44 snaps. Byron Murphy once every 6.09 snaps. So sort of right in the middle of those guys on this small sample, admittedly, but in a key game and an important game where he played all the snaps. That would be generating production twice as frequently as guys like Alfred Collins in 2022, Malcolm Roach in 2019, and Shiro Davis in 2015. It would be 3 times as frequently as guys like Taquan Graham in 2019, Trill Carter in 2023, and Obi Aguofo in 2022. So high impact. Again, that game was towards the end of the season. It's just one game, but it was a lot of snaps. I think that he brings along with him and there are things like Cody might mention his feet, hand placement, stuff like that. There are things to clean up, right? But he's a freshman, and he's a freshman All-American, and you need him. So that's why I say don't let him out of the building.
And Cody, one of the things I like, and I've heard this comparison, there's almost like a Mosley thing about him, whereas because it's a freshman, just like Mosley, that developed into something by the end of the year. By the end of the year, they're looking really good. Now, Mosley's got an ACL at the end of his high school career that might help explain it. But give me your thoughts on Watson and the fact that, in his freshman year, like Alex is saying, to get into an impactful game at the end of the year, and he's getting that many snaps, All-American love. Like, it was a hell of a finish to a freshman year.
And not even like just getting at the end of the year. Like this guy played 493 snaps last year, which in comparison to the Texas guys who played 3-4 more games, that was only 100 fewer snaps than Alfred Collins, just under 100 fewer than Vernon Broughton. I think Alex laid it out pretty much perfect. The only worry and the only question I've had, and we talked about this last night on Football with Friends, is the pass rush perspective. And I think he's, top of the line for his age group in run defense, but I worry about just this overall defensive line and pass rush. And I think the thing that I've come to over the last, 12, 16 hours since we did Football with Friends last night is, continuing to just believe in Kenny Baker. If Kenny Baker, we talked about this last week with Levon Johnson, the kid from Maryland that they signed. If Kenny Baker wants him and we're all kind of like biting our tongue about it, we should trust Kenny Baker. I know maybe the stripes aren't quite, on the wall as much as a guy like Kyle Flood has with the offensive line and progressing those guys through Christian Jones, Cam Williams, and even now to Trevor Gooseby. But we should trust Kenny Baker. The guy's been to the league and done it. And with all of these defensive linemen, including Watson, if he brings him in, I'm starting to think of Josiah Sharma was a better prospect coming out of high school. And Josiah Sharma carries a little bit of baby fat. And he's a guy that you could see if a Josiah Sharma went to a Syracuse, you could tell yourself a pretty clean story that Josiah Sharma could have some similar success at that level, right? This kid was once committed to Kent State, right up until his commitment flipped to Syracuse. He had an OV at Tennessee. I don't know what the storyline is, why he went to Syracuse or not, but he played, he succeeded, and now he's going to potentially get a step all the way to the top, up to Texas. And from a run defense standpoint, if you look on PFF and look at his grades across everybody else's, a 77.4 run defense grade, which is the best amongst any of the players, any of the other defensive linemen that they've brought in, anybody that's on the roster currently, and it's the most comparable to anybody else the last 2 years when you talk about Sweat, Murphy, Collins, and Broughton. And I'm not saying he's going to be in that level, but in 2 years under Kenny Baker, I think you could tell yourself that, which is where I've started to come around even more and more.
We are talking about Murad Watson, big defensive lineman from Syracuse. And as we are talking today, this is the day he is visiting Texas. He's on campus today. So that's why we're having the discussion today. Before we continue that discussion, I want to get a thought from Zach here in a second. Let me just remind everybody, the great sponsors around here. You see Daily and Black right there in the lower left. I'll throw up a QR code for you as well. They bring you the modcast each and every Tuesday. Check out Daily and Black. If you need some legal help, if you need some lawyers that are on your side, this is the place. And remember, it is DALY for Daily and Black. Trial lawyers. Thanks to Daily and Black for being a great partner of ours. Maybe appropriate, Zach, that you're rocking the Texas One Fund hat as I ask you this question, but I'm looking at this at a list. I saw a story today that Tennessee, Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas were 4 schools that have been connected to Watson that may have interest. And of course, I'm thinking, all right, so if Texas gets him, it means Georgia and Ohio State specifically wouldn't be getting him. As you look at this situation, whatever hitting the button is, whatever, doing everything that needs to be done to get him signed before he leaves campus, does Texas need to do that? Even though they've made all these moves already on defensive line, is this the type of guy that you need to make the move here, not just for yourself, but to keep him away from the Dogs and the Buckeyes?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's a really good talent. And, the thing that I keep going back to is the amount of snaps that they played last year, their guys, and the way they like to rotate them in and out, having that extra body that brings something a little different from a dynamics perspective to that line is going to be really important because, the SEC is going to tear you up front, and you don't want to have him on the opposite side of you going to Ohio State, going to another SEC school that you might have to face. And so, yeah, he instantly became one of the biggest, guys that it was like, they have to go get him in the portal.
Yeah. And by the way, somebody sent a good question. Sailor Joe says, are we the last visit? No. As far as I'm understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, he has not been to any of these places. This is the first big visit for him, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So. I mean, so this is a chance. And it's funny, Alex, when I read your title of Don't Let Him Get Off Campus, it felt like such a great old school thing because back in the day, I'm thinking of the Mac Brown era. That's the way recruiting worked. It was, if you got a big dog on campus and you know he's thinking about visiting College Station and Norman, just to use the rival examples, well, you just don't let him get there. You figure out a way to get that commitment while he's in Austin, and you don't even, and then if you're Mac Brown, you're trying to talk him out of even going to those places, to even making those visits. Like, Cody, that's kind of that old school vibe, but I think it does apply to this new school portal. You got to strike quick, because if you let him get to Columbus or Athens, I don't think it's happening.
And that's the thing is, I think that's a great analogy. And like, even still to this day, to a certain extent, when you're talking about like NFL free agents, coaches, that was one that haunts me, is the Brad Childress. I don't know if you guys remember him, but he was the coach for the Vikings for a couple of years. They were like, we got to keep him. And then Mike McCarthy was the other one, goes to Green Bay, wins the Super Bowl, etc. And who's left looking like the GOAT. But the interesting thing about like Ohio State and Georgia is, and I can't remember who brought it up, I think it might have been Catch, or maybe it was Anwar and maybe the War Room last week, about just laying out all the schools that Texas has attacked in the portal. And it's all Power 5 conferences outside of the kicker. Yeah. It's all Power 5 conferences. But if you go over to Oklahoma, if you go over to Georgia, or Ohio State, or Tennessee, they're all willing to look at the Arkansas Pine Bluffs, the Georgia States, the UNLVs, all these different schools that are at the G5 level or the FCS level, even North Dakota State's offensive linemen. And that's the one thing where you can go to those boards. They might not even have Murad Watson at the top. I was listening to an Ohio State show yesterday when the Murad Watson stuff started to come out a little bit more and more. And like, their focus is on Troy Pikes from Georgia State. And there's focus on Bernard Gooden from USF. Both of these guys, you go look them up on PFF. I haven't watched these guys respectively because they're not on the radar for Texas. They're both more pass rush centric guys. So I'm sitting here wondering, like, why isn't Texas going after those guys? But then I think back, like, they've made like Alex says, they tell you this time of year what their goal is, what they're trying to do. They're trying to get Power 5 talent that's played at the Power 5 level that could contribute today, because you're trying to win a championship, instead of trying to throw those darts to Georgia State, to App State, things like this. So I don't really know where I was going with that, other than the fact that, like, it seems like those other schools are more open to throwing those darts, where Texas is pretty much saying, like, if we think you belong here, it's because we've seen you play against the top dogs like Miami that Alex charted. And this kid played 69 out of 74 snaps against the Miami Hurricanes, who were, inches from being a playoff team, had the number one quarterback in the draft this year. Like, it's a big roster. It's a big team. So he had success against them.
Well, and to continue that point in a way, Alex, and Cody's right about, what the Georgias and Ohio States are doing. With that said, how important is it for them to get Watson? Because if he can get to Austin and then away from Austin, and he hasn't signed anything, considering what Cody just told us about Ohio State and Georgia, I mean, it feels so huge for either the Dogs or the Buckeyes to get this guy, if he were somehow to leave Austin still saying, no, let me take a look at stuff. It's going to be a huge target for those schools.
Yeah, I mean, two schools that are on the schedule too. I mean, right. I was
yeah.
It's like,
and you're probably going to play one of them twice. You might have to play both of them twice.
It feels like it would feel like last year, kind of like having to bow out of the Dominic Williams stuff and just having to realize, hopefully he goes to Oklahoma and he's not that good.
But in that case, Alex, it's a great point. Though, deep down, we all knew Oklahoma wasn't badass last year. We knew it going into the year. We know going into this year that Georgia or Ohio State gets even more Georgia or Ohio State if a dude like this ends up there.
Well, I haven't looked enough at, I guess, at Ohio State's, how they have reloaded at defensive line after losing like Tyleek and some of these other guys. Cody, you might have a better grasp on that than I have. I'm not sure. I think I would venture to guess, just based on the way the Texas defensive line looks right now, I think the Texas probably, would be the team that would offer him basically a very, very high likelihood of starting. I'm not sure he would go to those other spots and they would say, all right, this guy comes in, it's like, I'm a 95% sure he's going to start. I kind of think that about Texas. Mm-hmm. The other one, was there some kind of Tennessee stuff too? Because we now know that Tennessee, I haven't heard anything about what happened with Aguiar, how much he's getting paid. But if they had 2.7 million earmarked for Nico, and they just give Aguiar something like, hey, dude, come to Tennessee, lower state income taxes. We'll pay you the same thing that you were going to get paid out there in California. We know that the reporting on that, whenever they got him from App State, was 1 million. So they freed up 1.7 million of dedicated funds. And
I did see Tennessee on a list. I read something today that had those three: Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, and Tennessee as involved.
I mean,
and that was his last official visit in high school just a year ago.
Okay. All right. And for those that don't know, kids from New Jersey, there's no geographical advantage for really anybody. He's a New Jersey guy. So it's not like he's right in Big Ten country. It's not like he's a Georgia or Bama, or Florida kid, and he's not from Cali, in terms of and he's not obviously a Texas guy that would lead you to believe one has a chance over the other. This is just going to be about the argument to make, Zach, for what this will be today. How urgent does Texas make this? Because Watson can see they've made moves at D tackle. He can see it, laid out. They did it in the winter portal with a few guys. Now they've done it again already. But now it's like, how important are they going to try to make him feel today, even though they've already made these moves?
I think that's the other thing that Texas football has done really well, though, is they've been smart about their moves, right? They don't always just go in like some of these other schools and just say, hey, here's the entire bucket. It's all for you. They're very good at identifying that right and appropriate number and building that message of here's why Texas and here's why you're going to win at Texas, right? And so, and not just win, but develop. So I think that's, you have to include that in part of the equation is, the ability to have a Baker go, look, I'm going to have you in that first round. I'm going to have you in that second round. I'm going to make more production out of you and make you look better to the draft scouts. I'm going to put you in a position to succeed. Oh, and by the way, there's still a nice pot of money to be had. It may not be the largest number every single time, but yeah, I think he's certainly a guy that the team is very high on for sure.
And again, Murad Watson is the name. Go check out orangebloods.com and that piece that Alex did, taking a look at different plays. And Alex, that was everything you look at is strictly from that Miami game. Is that true?
Yeah, I watched back the Miami game. I wanted to watch a big game that was towards the end of the season where you could see how he developed through the course of the year. We know how important it is to watch these guys, freshmen, at the end, So that was the one I usually like to watch between 60 and 100 plays of these guys. It usually takes me about 3 games to do that because generally transfer portal dudes are rotational players. This guy just doesn't rotate out. So it was enough of a sample for me, and especially given the magnitude of the game to where it doesn't take you that long to see the traits.
Yeah, he can absolutely go. So keep an eye on that. And as we talk to you here in the noon hour on a Tuesday, if everything rolls like it did, last Friday, it felt like by the time everybody's happy hour and early dinner time was done, Texas had already made multiple moves. So as you're getting off work today, double check orangebloods.com. Make sure you're following Orange Bloods Live, because by the time we all go to bed tonight, maybe it's done with Murad Watson. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Thanks to all of our great partners at Orange Bloods Live, like Deep Eddy Vodka. You guys know I love it. Here's their idea for a pina colada with that new Deep Eddy Vodka pineapple flavor. It is the 9th flavor available. So when you go out to have a tasting, you're going to get 9 different vodkas to try and check out. But if pineapple is not your thing, y'all know I've tried a few of them out there. They got all kinds of flavors for you, since they do now have 9 different varieties. So if you're into the sweet tea vodka, they've got great cocktails along that path. If you are into the cranberry vodka, you're a little more of a Cosmo type of flavor person, hey, you go right down that road. They got all kinds of good stuff for you. And they have great barbecue to pair with it at the Crimson Creek Smokehouse food truck out there. Thursdays through Sundays, make your plans to get out to the Deep Eddy Vodka tasting room. It is so good. Modcast for you on this Tuesday. Again, Anwar and Jason dealing with some other stuff today. We thank Cody and Zach for jumping in. Obviously, we always thank Alex for bringing his badass background. We got some good backgrounds today. Alex always bringing that good hill country background. Zach's rocking some great taxidermy, which I don't think any of us could match. The spiral horns are excellent.
I could show you something that could match up pretty well.
Yeah, you got something? I'm pretty sure you could. I'm sure you could. Is it in the room with you right now?
It's in a room over, but maybe I can take a photo of it for the next modcast.
Yeah.
But I think even Zach could say that. I'm not saying it's better, but it would belong on that wall for sure.
And then with Cody, I'm just getting like sun porch vibes, just like comfy sun porch kind of vibes is what I'm getting.
Exactly.
I like
Tampa, Florida. It's humid as heck. I got the wavy trees, a little breeze. I'm doing good.
I dig it. Thank you guys for jumping in the chat as well. I'll throw this one up just because Orange Blood is looking that carefully. Chad, why is there a missing helmet behind you? Orange Blood, it is for those no good, dirty Philadelphia Eagles. That's what's supposed to be in that spot. But for a little while, I've taken the champs and put them up top. So the Eagles and Ohio State. I think I'm covered with the graphic right now. But the Eagles and Ohio State are both up there. Let me see if I'll show you. Yeah, there you go. Right. See up there at the top. Yeah. So we'll have to move them back at some point because they are the Eagles and it is driving me crazy. That
you're like a grown child, man. That's like something that my kid would have in his room. He's like 7 years old.
Yes. That is absolutely the way to say it, Alex. I am a grown child and I can't explain to you why when like Texas and Ohio State is coming up and I can take both helmets and point them at each other. I can't tell you why it makes me so happy. It just does, because when I was a kid and Monday Night Football would come on and they'd crash the helmets together, it just made me feel good. And for some reason, I don't know what it is. I have no idea. It's an illness.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean,
it is a legitimate illness. Hell, I got all 8 original XFL helmets behind me right now because it's springtime. That's how sick I am. Derek gets us back on track with, I think, a great chat. We have 2-year window with Arch. In my opinion, we have to go all in and make the most of this window. Derek, it's a great comment, and it is one and I think it's been mentioned already a little bit with the, in this show. But, Zach, when I think of Ketch and his reporting at orangebloods.com, hearing from sources that Texas is going to go, he's used the phrase all in, going to go all in NIL or on this season, kind of like Ohio State did last year. The reporting on Ohio State last year was they are not going to look back. They may look back and say we missed on some football. They are not going to look back and say we missed on building this team. And according to what Ketch is hearing, and I know a lot of you guys have maybe been hearing some of this stuff, Texas is not going to let that happen, especially when they've got one, more than likely 2 years with Arch Manning. They're going to try to maximize it.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with that. I mean, just having Arch there, they understand and fully grasp where they're at. They've made the playoffs 2 years in a row. Great. Now they need to take that next step. They need to go all in to build that roster so that you're not just planning for success under Arch, but you're also planning for what happens after Arch, right? You want to build around so that you can show the blueprint of here's where we put you at, here's where we develop, here's our success, and then here's how we're going to just continue to make this the blueprint year after year. So
the other thing I wonder here, somebody sent a good chat. Vivek, what's up, Vivek? This guy may demand 1.5 to 2. We usually don't want to do that. It'll be hard to win that bidding war. Vivek, great point. And this is where, again, you're not bidding directly against Georgia and Ohio State, but Cody, don't you need to know what Georgia and Ohio State are willing to do before you talk to Watson? Like, don't you need to be able to give Watson a number that makes him realize, oh, okay, well, Austin's where I need to be, and not be thinking about a comparison? That's the tough game Texas has got to play today.
Well, 1.5 to 2 would be like, all right, man, call us next week if you can't, if you don't like our number type of situation. That'd be where I would be. I don't, whatever. But to say you need to know what Georgia or Ohio State's willing to pay before you are willing to offer, I think I would say no. I'm not sure Texas looks at it that way either. I know, the collectives might, but I'm not sure the coaches do. I think the coaches might be like, we want this thing, how we want it, how our locker room is. And if we just, paid Justice Terry, let's say $1 million, And what would the precedent be to say this kid just came in from Syracuse, and I know he's got a year under his belt, but we're going to give him 1.5. Like, I just think that, we've talked about that before with the receiver room and all this other stuff, but I think that just muddies a lot of waters. And to me, and I think that the Oklahoma thing this last week could potentially be just that, in that they signed David Stone, the 5-star D tackle. Then the next portal window, they went and got Dominic Williams, and we heard that number was near $1 million, if not $1 million. And he was probably getting paid more than David Stone was getting, right? And so Stone goes into the portal, comes back out, because I imagine they matched or gave him the bump ahead of Dominic Williams. That's just my theory in my head, and that's kind of where I would go with this, is that if he doesn't, if let's say Justice Terry is $1 million guy, if Murad Watson's asking for 1.5, I'd say, you know what, man, like, we value you at 700,000 and we're going to give you 700 or 750, then that's the conversation you have. And if he doesn't want to agree with that, if he wants 1.5, you let him walk. Just like Fran Brown let that wide receiver walk last week. That was like, I want 2.5. And he goes, the only dude getting 2.5 is Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. And that's just kind of the way I would attack that.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree with that, Cody. I mean, even Dominic, like, the number out there was about $1 million. I think he actually was under 800,000 in reality for his NIL deal in his package. Like, and here's the thing about NIL. Everyone loves to overblow the number. Why? Well, one, it's a talking point. And then two, it actually makes your school look really good when you can either say, oh, we landed him because we were able to splash that cash, or vice versa. Oh, no, we're not willing to be dumb with money, right? And so, like, you have to play that argument with all these, outlets and everything. And so oftentimes when you hear these numbers, it's reality is 70% of that number most of the time. So,
yeah. And back to the discussion we had, does Texas take the risk? Let's say they did what Cody just mentioned. If they start talking 700, 750, and they say, you know what, we don't think you're going to be, that's where it's going to be. Do you take the risk that he goes to Athens and he goes to Columbus and here's a number that's lower than that, and then calls you back and says, hey, how are you? Like, do you take that risk? Because then there's also the risk he goes to those two cities with your number to yell at them, and then they find, a little extra money laying around. So we will see.
The thing is, that's why you have, these general managers. Like, they're supposed to be understanding where the competition is, how much the NIL collectives potentially have room to play with, or, how they've operated in the past. And so, again, that's, one of the things that you always hear about Texas is like, hey, they back their numbers up. Like, they put it in paper.
Right.
Whereas a lot of these other schools are like, well, we can get you here, and then, extra stuff will get you here. And, one of the things that Texas always tells them is like, look, we give you a number, you're hitting that number. Like, it's guaranteed. Whereas some of the other schools have maybe had some issues with that.
Yeah. And I also like Mark just going flat out old school. Just take him to the Yellow Rose for lunch. He won't remember the numbers. Okay. You know what, Mark? Whatever works. Whatever works for Murad Watt. It is free agency time, right? This is what it is. It's like those, whether it's whatever your favorite free agent pro sport is, whether you love the NBA version or the NFL version or baseball's version the most. That's kind of what this is. And ATX Bates, we will check with Sark and see if we can get your super chat expenses covered. We will double check on that. Thank you guys, over 600 of you in the Specs chat. Speaking of Specs, let's hear from them. There is an anniversary going on at Specs. They don't care if it's not a crazy round number. They just want you to come celebrate it. Here you go.
Have you heard the news? Specs is turning 63, and we're celebrating you. Whether you're looking for whiskey, canned cocktails, or wine, Specs has it all, with Texas-sized savings all month long. Specs. Cheers to save.
All right. Hope that came across smoothly. It kind of was choppy on my end. Shout out to Specs. Been a great partner of ours since right at the beginning of Orange Bloods Live with the Specs chat. Go get stocked up on whatever you want, whether it's that new Pineapple Deep Eddy vodka, or if you're loving your whiskey, or you love beer, or all of it, and all the great gourmet foods as well. They have all kinds of good stuff. All right. So before we move on to anything else, Alex, anything else you'd want to say about Murad Watson, the guy that's on campus today for Texas? Obviously, you've stated why you think he's so important. Anything else that we need to mention about him?
No, I just think he's a good player. If you give Isaiah Bond $900K, he's probably worth. It was a similar kind of situation. Great need. Good player that felt like he was kind of coming into his own. And I would defer to Zach on this, but gosh, I bet you the NIL guys probably feel a little bit hurt about that outlay, about the return on investment there. But you win some, you lose some. I'd say give the guy the your best offer. See if you can just get it done. Just you might not have to worry about competition with Georgia and Tennessee and Ohio State if he never gets there.
Yeah, right. That's true. That's that first point from earlier, right? If you give him enough of an argument now, he never gets there. He never makes it to Columbus.
Yeah.
Again, that's back to that old school vibe. The new school vibe in recruiting can be, go ahead, make your visits. We know you'll be back around, but when it's portal time, there seems to be a lot of urgency that is there. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. And again, Murad Watson is visiting Texas today, as we're talking here in the 12 o'clock hour on a Tuesday.
Wearing that number 88 at Syracuse, just like Barron Sorrell. We got Barry Sorrell in the chat. 88's great, dude. He's pumped for the draft, dude.
Oh,
I'd be pumped too, man. I'd be pumped too, man.
You know he is. Daddy Sorrell, Papa Sorrell. We hope 88 has a great draft experience. I can't wait to see where he goes and what he is going to do. So, guys, since Papa Sorrell mentioned the draft, let me let's throw out a draft question here, because I'm now seeing a mock, and I think it got thrown into our chat. Our group chat, but mocks where Shedeur Sanders is falling all the way out of the first round. Are you guys buying this at all? Cody, let me start with you. Are you buying a world where Shedeur Sanders sees 32 picks go by and he's still sitting there?
Oh, yeah, I can see the world. I don't think it's some alternate, cockamamie universe that he falls out of round one. We did a mock on our other channel just an hour ago, and we got to pick 21, and Alex took him to the Steelers. But I think if he makes it past the Steelers right there, which we know they have other needs, cornerback, whatever, on the trenches, like if the Steelers don't go quarterback, or if they prefer Dart or something, Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, all of a sudden you have sort of a game of chicken being played between some of these teams and trading up. And you have the Browns sitting there at 33 and the Giants at 34 who need quarterback, and the Saints at 40 who
Giants will just trade from 34 to 24 and give the Vikings some more.
But here's the thing. You're playing chicken. This is the whole point. You're playing chicken, and it's like, well, who do I need to move up? What if neither? We don't know, man. What if both of these teams have Dart ahead of Shedeur? What if one of them has Milroe ahead? And I know that sounds crazy, but it is what it is. The one thing I can say is consensus, and I wrote this in our team's chat, and it's been the big hubbub, and I said it on a show yesterday. I was like, it sounds crazy to think about, but the Milroe thing, and the one consistent thing we've heard is that not a lot of people have true first-round grades. Almost nobody has true first-round grades on Shedeur Sanders. He's a second-round graded quarterback, but we know quarterbacks get pushed up. The one other consensus thing has been about Jalen Milroe is he's the one lottery ticket at the quarterback position. And so if you have somebody that's willing to risk it for the biscuit, like they've done for the last decade with Lamar and Richardson and all that, and Jalen Hurts went 42nd overall. I know that's not first round, but the thing I'm trying to tie in line here is that nobody's going to have the same exact rankings 1 through 6 at quarterback. And if all it takes is a game of chicken between the Browns, Giants, and Saints to push this thing into the second round, and all of a sudden then, and the mock we just did earlier was like pick 32. I had the Giants jumping up with the Eagles to get a quarterback. It's like you could get to that point, or they could just play chicken into the second round. And what if Shedeur falls out? I think there's enough good players here, startable talents, that all these teams in the 20s need, interior offensive lineman, a tight end, a corner, all this wide receiver, Matthew Golden falls, like all these different things that could push a guy like Shedeur Sanders down, because, all those teams don't need a quarterback. Yeah, the Rams could use one. They could use a backup for Matthew Stafford to, precede him for the next 10 years, but they don't have to have it. They could go offensive line or receiver. So I think if I had to put a percentage on the chance that he falls out of round one, 7-8%.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not high, but it's the world where it happens. And
yeah, man. I'll tell you, if I see Jackson Dart as the second quarterback off the board in the first round, I did not have that. I'm not saying anything bad about Jackson Dart. I don't think he's a horrible quarterback or something, but second guy off the board,
Yeah.
I was not expecting that. So we'll see what
I wonder
happens.
if Ole Miss will retire his jersey then.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody in the chat said, wait, you can't slip out of the first round. They retired your jersey. What are you talking about? Draft comes up on Thursday. Obviously, we'll talk about the Longhorns that are supposed to go in the first round coming right up. Also, we'll talk Texas and Texas A&M getting back together in baseball with Zach before we wrap up. Real quick, let me talk about one of my favorite places on the planet, and that is Sinus and Snoring Specialists. Why do I love them so much? Because they got me sleeping better. They figured out the snoring issues. They got rid of my allergies for good, and they can do all that for you. We're into a beautiful time of year unless you have allergies and sinus infections and you can't sleep at night because all the pollen comes out and all the stuff happens in springtime. Used to happen to me all the time. It has not happened since 2017. That's when I went to Sinus and Snoring Specialist. You'll meet Dr. Slaughter in the first consultation. He prides himself on it. He'll tell you about all the different options they have. Your path won't be the same as mine. It won't be the same as my wife's. Everybody's path is different. Get to sleeping better. Get to feeling better. Make it the gift to yourself in 2025. Maybe you have a spring birthday. Make that birthday the best birthday gift you've ever had. 601-0303. Text them or call them securely on that number or go to sinussnoringent.com. Get it taken care of. You know you need to. Sinus and Snoring Specialists. Feel clear, rested, and healthy. All right. It is the Modcast on a Tuesday, and we're just getting into a little bit of draft talk. So let me ask this question too before we hit a little bit of baseball with Zach. Alex, Cody, the three Longhorns that are more than likely going in the first round, tell me the number for the third guy. What pick do we think all three are gone?
25.
By 25 for sure?
Yep.
Okay. That's kind of the neighborhood I would have guessed. Cody, you agree with that? By the 25th pick, all three of those guys have a home.
I say 26.
No,
Okay.
Houston.
No, I mean, we literally just did a mock 10 minutes ago, and it was Matthew Golden fell to the Rams. So I'll say 26. I understand Houston, but I would say 26. It's the same area, same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, if people are up for a nerdy stat, go to orangebloods.com and the forum. I put up a post today about a crazy stat for Texas. They've only had three guys go in the first round one time ever. 1980 is the only time it happened. Mack never had it. Darrell Royal never had it. Sark's got a chance to do that. It's kind of a wild stat. It's also a little wild that Alabama's had 12 of those and Ohio State's had 11 of those over the years.
Wow.
So you can go take a look at some of that stuff. Just bizarre. Hell, the Aggies have had 2. I was not expecting to find that. Oklahoma's had 4.
You guys should make a banner about that. You guys
no, they shouldn't. Please,
no.
Don't
Mike, Johnny, and who's the tackle? Jokel?
Don't give them ideas. Yeah, 2014. It was even the year. It was 2014 and 94 were the 2 years. So it wouldn't have been. That would have been Johnny's year. You're right. The Johnny year and then back to 94. Jokel?
Yeah.
Evans.
Mike Evans.
Jokel, Evans, and I think those are the 3. So that's big history that Sark's going after. And obviously, if you want to hang out in that neighborhood with those biggest of big dogs, in terms of the draft, the Bama and Ohio State numbers are really silly. So just keep track of it in the first round on Thursday. How many schools get 3 guys in the first round? That really does kind of show where you are in at least one metric. That comes up on Thursday. Friday is when this baseball series cranks up between Texas and Texas A&M. Zach, I wanted to get your thoughts. I know you got to roll by the top of the hour, but everybody was excited about this anyway. Now we're almost here. I said yesterday on a show, if they both lost every conference game, this would still be a big deal because it's the 2 schools and it's Schloss-Nagel and all that. But man, these 2 teams now, Texas obviously super consistent throughout the year. The Aggies have found themselves recently. What's your setup for this series? Like, what's your big focus going in?
Yeah, I think for Texas, the interesting thing is going to be what happens Friday night. They're not going to have Jared Spencer, who's been their Friday night guy all season long. Very likely you're going to see Ruger Riojas move from Sunday to Friday. So that's a really good matchup with Ryan Prager, who A&M will undoubtedly go with as they have all season long. the thing about the Aggies is they're just hot right now. I mean, 9 of their last 10 contests they've won, and they've put up 11.2 runs during that time span, or average that each game. I mean, so they finally started clicking on offense. They got the offense going. Jace Lavalette, he's still in contention for 1-1 overall, and he's got the bat going. He had 5 home runs this past weekend, and so they got Caden Sorrell back healthy. They got Gavin Cash healthy enough that he's being able to contribute on a daily basis. And then some of their transfers they brought in, like Wyatt Hensler, is really good. So I think winning Friday night is pretty paramount for the Horns, because if they get down in a hole 0-1, it's going to be really tough from a pitching perspective due to the fact that they don't have Jared Spencer Friday night, because that means they don't have a Ruger on Sunday. So, game 1, again, is going to be vital. It'll be interesting to see. Texas has been holding most of their SEC opponents, or all of them, to about half of what they are averaging run-wise. Can they do the same thing for a red-hot offense, right? Like, and those are just the on-field storylines. Of course, the storyline around Schlossnagle being at Texas now, along with Max Weiner and a significant portion of his staff. Caleb Longley is the hitting coach at A&M. Most of these guys were recruited by each one of the staffs, and so it's just storylines galore. And just the fact that this is the first SEC series between the two teams, right? Like, in of itself, if there had been no coaching changes whatsoever in the offseason, this would still be a big deal.
Right.
Fascinating series from a player perspective. Both have been very talented. One has been just consistent all year long. The other one was started out of the gate really, really poorly, but now have positioned themselves to, get right back into the race of hosting a regional potentially. So,
yeah, wild ride for the Aggies, where they got busted up. They got run ruled on Friday in Knoxville, like 10-0, 11-0. And from that point is your 9-1 mark. Since that, including winning the series in Fayetteville, it's crazy. And then on the Texas side of it, as consistent as they have been, one of the numbers I always look at, Zach, is 1-run games. Texas is 4-1 in 1-run games. Not a ton of them, right? You don't want to, it's like 1-score games in football. I don't want you to be in a whole lot of them, and I want you to win win a whole lot more than you lose. They're doing exactly that. 4-1 in those kind of games. That's a great number.
Yeah, and it's just, Texas at home has been a different animal. They really feed off that energy, even having lost guys like Max Ballou, having lost Adrian Rodriguez for a time. Mendoza's banged up with his shoulder. They've been able to put all these position guys in place to still be successful offensively. And now you see Adrian taking much better at-bats because his hand is finally healing. You have a guy like Mendoza that's still back at the, top of the lineup. And then, lo and behold, the 5-star football player is here. You got Jonah Williams just showing out in his first 2 games. And while you can't expect Jonah to play like that every single game, I mean, he's a big-time baseball talent as well. His brother was a top 2 round draft pick. So he really knows baseball. He lives baseball. He loves it. And the team is really excited for, what he's shown in left field and what he can provide offensively as well.
Yeah, bottom line, he's a part of this series, no doubt.
Absolutely. He's your starting left fielder going forward.
There you go. Before we let you go, Zach, because I know you need to run, but ATX Bates threw us a super chat for you. $4.99. What is it that Max Weiner has done to flip the staff? Development, pitch sequence, or other?
Honestly, it's a little bit of everything, but it starts with the trust. The Max Weiner's really big, and the entire staff is really big on the mental side of the game. There's probably not another team in the nation or a staff in the nation that puts as much focus on the mental side as Texas. And Max has simplified it down and said, listen, your entire life throwing the baseball, you've heard you have to do this, or you have to do this. You have to have this type of shape. You have to have this spin or this velocity. He's like, don't worry about it. He's like, I want to throw what you feel comfortable with, what you know that you can throw for a strike. And I want you to throw it right down the damn middle. He's all about you win the first strike, and then you win that 1-1 count. And so just the confidence that he's instilled in the players and put them in a mental place to succeed is absolutely massive. It helps that they've brought in some really talented arms, guys like a Jared Spencer or a freshman like Dylan Volantis, And then for the older guys, you look at a Max Grubbs, who's, he's on the National Pitcher of the Year award list. I mean, that's huge, right? Like, he's not even a starting pitcher. He's a relief guy. But again, putting him in a place where he feels like he can be successful regardless of the count, regardless of who's at bat. So it's, development, mental game, and certainly on the, pitch sequence, he really does a really good job of keeping hitters off balance and attacking their strengths versus their weaknesses. You watch some of the guys in the fall and you're like, what the hell? Like, what? This is not a fastball count, or this is not a breaking ball count. Why are you throwing that pitch? And it's like, well, one, you're not expecting it. And two, I know that he can throw a strike. And so he's just a really big student of the game, and he understands how to call it.
It's good stuff. ATX Bates, thank you for jumping in with that super chat. We appreciate it. Cody, do you have something for Zach before we let him go?
I do. You kind of said that Jonah was going to be the starting left fielder going forward. Is that, can you just, I mean, again, I watched baseball growing up, big baseball fan, major leagues and stuff like this, but like from a understanding that perspective of like the true freshman coming in, now he's a starting left fielder. I heard the at-bat success this last weekend. Like, can you explain, like, is that a rarity? Like, what does this mean to his development as a baseball player or a two-sport athlete? Can you, like, just give me kind of like a understanding of what level we're at here with Jonah Williams?
Yeah. I mean, having a freshman be a guy that's on a team that's number one in the nation is not necessarily rare. Like, it does happen. Absolutely. Okay. Having a 17-year-old kid who left high school. I mean, he's supposed to be playing high school baseball right now. I mean, he's still 17 years old.
Yeah.
He's got to get his mom to sign off on things. But having a 17-year-old kid that is as mature as he is to be in this spot is very unique. And then you look at the circumstances around it. He came in and joined the team in January. So he didn't play in the fall. He was playing high school ball, right? And even then he broke his clavicle or his collarbone. So he couldn't lift. He couldn't throw. He couldn't really run or be active when he got here in January. And so basically from January until now, it's been, hey, we got to get you in shape. We got to get you in baseball shape. We got to get you in that baseball frame of mind, because you haven't played in over a year now. And the last time you were played was like travel ball, right? Like, it's not the same level of SEC competition. And Slossengle mentioned, he's like, look, the last 2 weeks is the first time that Coach Tulowitzki was able to sit down and actually start working on the adjustments at the plate, because they had him start off hitting off the tee again. I mean, that's where they started the basics. So yeah, super unique. Not something that you would ever see in a season, especially one where it's the number one team in the nation. You just don't have holes where a guy steps in and is like, oh yeah, here I am. I'm just going to step in and hit, whatever 750 or whatever it was over the weekend.
Wow. Texas and Texas A&M. It's a 7:00 start Friday. SEC Network. If you can't get out there, 3:00 Saturday and 3:00 Sunday, and both those are on TV on ESPN2. Again, if you can't get out to the dish, Zach. We obviously
someone said it was a blister. Unfortunately, Jared's is not a blister. It's not going to require Tommy John, but you're not going to see him this weekend, and there's still a possibility you will not see him the rest of the season.
Okay. Gotcha.
And then for Ace Whitehead, he threw a really good sim game last week, and coach has said that, he's coming on and they're hoping to have him back on the bump here pretty quickly. Probably during a midweek non-conference game, maybe Prairie View A&M is probably the first time you'd see him. So,
all right, Zach, before we let you go, let's go bold here. Buy or sell. Texas not only beats the Aggies, they sweep them.
Sell. I don't think they'll sweep them. The offense has just been too good. But I think Texas does win the series. And, if you start looking at the number of wins versus how many games are remaining, Texas could lose every single series for the rest of the season and still win the SEC potentially. So the magic number is kind of starting to be like 5 wins out of 12 games.
Yeah, that's what happens when you've got 4 sweeps in your first 6 series. You won all 6 series and you swept 4 of them. That's how you do that. You start that well. That's incredible. Zach, we appreciate the time, man. The stuff with Schloss has been great, and I know people are following everything on orangebloods.com. Have a good one, brother. We appreciate the time. That is Zach Sim. And again, check out orangebloods.com for all the baseball stuff. And it might be a great week if you haven't checked out the interviews with Schlossnagle. It's A&M week. What does he have to say about it? You know, there were questions about him facing the Aggies the first time and all that. So jump on in with that. We'll round out with a little football talk. And guys, as we come back around, I guess this is kind of back around to the Murad Watson discussion. Colby threw something interesting out I want to get y'all's thoughts on, and it's this. Do y'all think when he hears the pitch, do they say, once you leave here, the offer is off the table, or something like that? We didn't really discuss that angle of it, but I'll get both of y'all's thoughts. Alex, you first. Do you think this is part of the idea for Texas, that if he tries to walk out the door, you do the kind of the car dealership thing? Like, well, you know, that deal's just for today. Like, do you think that's part of it?
Well, for one, if anybody at the car dealership ever does that to you, that's the sign to say, you
Yes.
say, I am out of here, man. Like, no, I don't think that's for one, I don't think that's a very good, that's like a negotiating tactic to use with some kind of, terrorist and some kind of, spy book about counterintelligence, or like, I don't think that real people,
That's the NFL draft deal, right? From the draft day, was it draft day? When he picks up the phone, he goes, that deal is we're in a whole different world right now. That deal is no longer on the table.
You think that? But we're talking about modern NIL here, Cody, where there are no.
It also doesn't
rules.
Really fit the way. It doesn't fit the mold of how Sark and Sark recruits guys and they commit, and he's like, go take all the visits you want, go do what you want. Like, yeah. I don't. That doesn't seem like a tactic that would be. If they deployed that tactic, it would feel like one that was an uncommon tactic for this staff to deploy.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
No, I think I tend to agree with that. That's an interesting way to look at it. I think it more is likely that Texas, maybe and we saw it with the Dominic Williams story. It might be more likely that Texas tells a guy, this is what, here's what we're willing to do. And we don't think anybody else is going to go there. And then eventually Dominic Williams found out that was true. There was, again, we talked about it in this show. There were stories about Dominic Williams getting all this crazy money. He didn't really get the crazy money. Maybe it dialed Oklahoma's number up a little bit, what Texas told him, but Texas was willing to give him more. So I do wonder if that's the case too. But Cody, I'm not sure if I'd play that game with Georgia and Ohio State right now. Playing that game with Oklahoma nowadays is one thing. Do you really want to play that game with Ohio State and Georgia? That's what I don't know.
I guess it depends on, their perceived need. Like, unfortunately, our guys like Alex have only been able to go to one practice this year. So we really don't have a full grasp on what that defensive line does look like, right? We've only seen, 10 minutes or 15 minutes total of 15 practices this spring. So we just know that they have 4 guys they added this year, and they had 3 they added last year. So we know that they're showing their hand that they want defensive line. They're going to continue to need defensive line, but I think you're kind of stuck in a weird spot where, yeah, you could say like, this is our deal, take it or leave it. That's probably the tactic I would assume they would go with. Like, we're at 700. That's what we're going to be. We're not going up from there. If you need to go out and look somewhere else, go do it. But that's where we're at. I don't know if they would pull it and be like, if you leave, you're done. But yeah, I think Alex is probably right. It's not really up there, not really kind of their MO or their I don't know what the word is, history, doing stuff that way.
Yeah, and it is all fair in love and Portal Combat. Oh my God, I just realized I didn't play the new Portal Combat intro for everybody. Have you seen it? No? Well, here it is. Come on. Bert Auburn needs a new home too.
Bert Auburn.
All right, shout out to Blake, the super producer, for sliding Bert Auburn into the end of that.
Has he landed anywhere yet?
I have not seen it. If he has, I have not seen a new landing spot for Bert Auburn. All right, before the guys get out of here and before we wrap it up, I'll get them a couple quick buy or sells. But let's remind you, when we're done, You know where Alex Dunlap might be going? Might be going to Hijack Poker. I don't know for sure, but sometimes he's there. Sometimes Catch is there. Our man Tom G and a whole lot of you roll out to hijackpoker.com. If you haven't tried it, it is online poker for everybody in the great state of Texas. Got to be in Texas to play. You can deposit in all kinds of ways. You can deposit at one of their locations if you want, and also cash out at one of their 6 Texas Card House locations. But if life just has you too busy and you just need to play some online poker, they're ready for you. Hijackpoker.com. Click on that app, put it on any device that you want. Or I should say, click the QR code and then put it on any device that you want. All right, guys, before we wrap up, just a couple of quick ones here for you. Wanted to do a little portal and well, just portal and kind of an emotional one, but let's do this one first. Portal for Texas, one more D tackle, one more tight end, and one more wide receiver. Cody, buy or sell?
One more D tackle, one more tight end, one more receiver. I'm gonna okay. So D tackle, yes. Tight end, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna sell. I'm gonna say I don't think they go to their tight end because they have injuries. Receiver wouldn't shock me. I would go one D lineman, one receiver option, and then an offensive lineman. I would prefer it be one D lineman, 2 offensive linemen. If you're really asking for truth serum here.
He wants heavy trenches. Alex, what do you think? Buy or sell?
No. So I think it'd be one D lineman, no tight end, and 50-50 on another wide receiver.
Gotcha. Okay. And finally, just checking the emotional level, you will miss the spring game. Buy or sell, Alex?
No, I mean, I won't personally. I would have loved to see it, and I'd almost take on the extra, doing the spring game deep dig. That's doing 2 different teams, so
That's
it's
true.
like it's 2, and it's like doing 2 games of like 80 plays because all the backups come in and stuff, and so it's like that thing takes me 40-45 hours every year. So I'm not going to miss that, but I would almost trade it for just being able to get to see these guys like live, just get to see them once for one practice. I think I would, but no, I'm not gonna miss. It's if we're talking about the game and I didn't have work associated with it, yeah, I'd miss it, but I'm not gonna miss all the work.
Gotcha. Cody, buy or sell?
Well, you see, the game we play on Football with Friends every Friday is Final Takes, where the people in the chat get to vote on the winner. And in this instance, for this question, I would say Alex is a coward because he said he's selling. And he also said that he would like to see the guys play. So I'm going to answer the question for Alex and give you my answer. And the answer is buy, because one, we do a show every day where we pontificate about this team for, an hour every single day. And we haven't seen them do anything in a month. Alex went to 1 practice. I think Alex would trade doing the 40 hours worth of work for getting at least eyeballs on some of these dudes this spring so that we have more to talk about over the summer and we get a little bit of an idea what Travis Shaw looks like, what Brad Spence looks like, and things like that.
Yeah, there you go. And Alex admitted that. Yeah, he said he might do that trade, but yeah, that sounds like a lot of work too. It is a weird world with no spring game, but I know you'll all get through it, and hopefully Orange Bloods Live is part of how you get through it. We appreciate y'all jumping in today. Let me just make sure to scan. We did not miss it. We got that super chat. Beautiful. Thanks to Zach Sim for jumping in. And again, big baseball series coming up this week. Check out orangebloods.com for all the coverage there. Check out orangebloods.com for Alex's piece on Murad Watson and why he thinks he is so important for Texas to get. And just keep your eyes and ears peeled, because who knows, that may be done. In fact, by the time Football with Friends is over this evening, it might be done. These 2 guys will have that for you at 6 o'clock tonight. Old Fashioned tomorrow morning with Anwar at 9. Definitely check that out, because Anwar's over at the Sark media availability today. He'll have thoughts from that in the morning. And then Jason and I'll have the recruiting hour at 10 o'clock tomorrow, the very latest on visitors that might be coming in, battles Texas might be in on, all that good stuff. Ojo, KJ Edwards, the names you want, Turntine, all those names you guys want to know about. We'll get you any and all updates from Jason's reporting. That is every Wednesday at 10. Thank you all for jumping in. Thank you for liking, subscribing, getting the notifications. Almost 800 of you in that Specs chat right now. If you didn't like it on the way in, Please like on the way out. Thanks to Alex, Cody, and Zach for jumping in today. Thanks to all of y'all for supporting. This is the Modcast, and we are Orange